Now that you know how the rubber stamp tool works, let's explore a really advanced set of tools that allow you to go in and fix images. Now, this set of tools is truly magical, and it will do 80 to 90% of the work for you. You still have to go in by hand most times, but sometimes you get lucky and it'll do all the work for you. Let me show you what I mean. So for this, we're going to start off with the file called sign.jpg. And what we're going to explore is something called content-aware filling. So for example, I have this image with this crack and some grass coming through. And if I look at the layers, there's just one layer, so nothing fancy there. And what I'd like to do is actually remove this grass. Well, for me to remove this grass, we're going to have to think about how do we paint the texture back in, how do we paint the sign, the yellow part back in, and the concrete part. Well, what we can do is ask Photoshop to actually do a majority of that work for us. Okay, I'm just making a marquee selection here and say, okay, now that we've made this selection, let's go up to Edit, Fill, and normally when you go to Fill, you normally have either background color, foreground color, or a pattern or something. But a new feature here that you see is Content Aware. This is just amazing. Let's go ahead and say, okay, we'll give it a minute to fire through and process this data. So it's going to say, all right, let me analyze all the different pixels and textures and colors that are in this photograph, and let me figure out what I would fill that with. If you take a look, that's pretty darn amazing. Now, mind you, we got a little bit of cleanup to do right here, and maybe a little bit of cleanup here. But quite frankly, that's really amazing. Let's say, for example, you wanted to get rid of this crack. We can just go to Edit, Fill, OK. And we'll give it a second to calculate. And there you go. It just filled it right in. Pretty amazing if you think about how much work it just did for us almost instantaneously. So let's take a look at a practical example. I have a picture here of Johnny Bench, a statue of him. And it's an okay picture, but it's got a couple of flaws. I've got this weird air vent that kind of messes up the composition, and then I've got this weird, lamp that looks like it's a growth coming out of his arm and kind of detracts from the actual image. So let's see how we can fix something like this. I've got my marquee tool. Okay, again, I only have one layer, so there's no fancy tricks going on here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly select and drag a quick marquee all the way around this lamp. And I can use my Alt to remove some of this data that we don't need. Okay, and by removing data, I'm just letting Photoshop know that, hey, I only want you to have to concern yourself with, this little part of information, not the whole scene. So it just makes it a little bit quicker. So I'm going to zoom in so you can see what's going on here. All right, we're going to go to Edit, Fill. We'll say OK. Give it a second to process. And just like that, it went through, found the brick pattern that should be there, put it in, tried to match up the color, and let's go up here and get this one right here. So, you don't have to use the lasso. I'll just do a quick and sloppy marquee around this thing. We'll go ahead and fill that as well. Okay. Give it a second. And even though these bricks are blurred, it will also blur those as well. So let's take a look at what this looks like now. And not bad, right? I mean, I did 3 clicks, and it quickly went through, found what I needed to find, matched up my brick, matched up the blur. If this would have had to been done by hand, I'd still be working on it. So again, it may not do every single situation for you, but quite frankly, it's going to do quite a few situations, and it's just a really amazing way to work, again, using this new content-aware filling.